The Israelis attacked the Damascus International Airport in Syria. So again, just to be clear, this is, the civilian airport, which I've flown in and out of more times than I can count. They've attacked it again. This is not the first time. What the Israelis have been is doing hundreds of airstrikes, if not thousands, in the last years. And I'll get to that in a second, but let me show you some of the damage, because this is very significant to the point that the airport has been shut down. It's completely ruined, right? Completely ruined. It cannot function anymore. This is from Sana, from the Syrian Arab News Agency. So they said here, this is from the Ministry of Transport, that the Israeli aggression that targeted Damascus International Airport's infrastructure caused heavy damage to the airstrips. Landing and departing flights have been suspended until further notice. No more incoming flights, no more outgoing flights. That's it. And here are some photographs of the damage, just so you can get an idea. This is from inside the airport. Honestly, I can't tell where that is. This looks like you can see some chairs here. What is this, the departing lounge? I can't tell. It's just so destroyed and messed up. And then the airstrip, of course, is even more telling. So this was posted by this Israeli imaging firm. They're called ImageSat, and they've shown satellite pictures of the airport before. Pay attention to the strikes, to the squares. Do you see those squares? There are 3 here and 3 down here. This is before. This is after. You can see the runway has been completely destroyed. Do you see the equal spacing on the strikes? So the Israelis have basically, on purpose, they've hit each runway 3 times in equal increments. Why do you think they've done that? They've done that on purpose, so no kind of aircraft can take off. Because they hit it a while back, I think it was a few weeks ago, and that prevented heavy aircraft from landing. But other planes could still take off. So now they've hit it in 3 increments, same on both runways, to make sure none of them can be used. That's quite vindictive. That's quite malicious. It's very, very clear. That is not, people are laughing and say, oh, look how accurate the Israeli defense forces are. Oh, they're the best in the world. They love this Hasbara, this propaganda that, the Israelis, they're the best, they're the smartest, all of this. Now, this is quite vindictive, actually. That's what it shows. The headline here, you can see in Al Jazeera, heavy damage to Damascus airport confirmed after Israeli attack. And then, of course, here, Syria's Damascus airport flight suspended, which is what I just read to you. I read to you the communique from the transport ministry that all flights are suspended. So they need to repair the airport now, and that's going to take a lot of time. No one knows how long that will take. France 24, this is what they said. They said Syria's repairing the airport damaged, and they're quoting the Syrian Observatory of Human Rights, which for those of you who know what that is, I mean, it's basically, I'm not going to get into this now, but it's based in London, and it's we all know what it is, okay? So either way, look what they say down here. According to the observatory, the damaged runway was the only one still operational after an Israeli strike last year put another one out of service. Okay? So again, you can see that this is something that is, happening regularly, where the Israelis are hitting Syria. But the airport specifically, there have been multiple strikes, and now they've really it's done. Completely out of service. Very, very vindictive. This took place on June 9th, 2022, this particular strike, and it was a pre-dawn raid. They've hidden the photographs. They say the following media includes, they basically say it's gory, right? It includes potentially sensitive content. But it's not at all. It's just the wreckage. So why are you hiding it? It's like they're trying to hide the evidence of the Israeli crimes. Why are you censoring it? Let people see what Israel's done. Why don't you show them, right? They do this on YouTube, by the way, the collateral murder video from WikiLeaks, or some of the videos that I've done, where it's really damning evidence of Western crimes. They make you log in or provide your ID, like these sort of obstacles and hurdles that discourage people from watching them. Now, this is obviously nothing new, right? The Israelis have been coming in and attacking Syria for years, literally years, almost every week for years. Here in the Washington Post, look what they say. They say Israel has staged hundreds of strikes on targets in Syria over the years, but rarely acknowledges or discusses such operations. It says it targets bases of Iran-allied militias, such as Lebanon's militant Hezbollah group, that has fighters deployed in Syria and fighting on the side of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government forces, and arms shipments believed to be bound for the militias. So this is the propaganda, of course. This is the pretext that the Israelis give. Now, once again, there's one article, I think, where the Israelis admit that they've done hundreds of airstrikes in Syria. It's from 2016, 2018. It's irrelevant. I mean, they're doing strikes every week. Who else is it? Of course, it's Israel. You know, people in Syria, the government, the residents, they all know it. It's the Israelis. It's no secret here. The Israelis, of course, nevertheless, they have people in the media. They have outlets in the media covering for them, right? So the Israeli government, the occupation government, they don't officially say we did the strike. They'll have the media do it for them and say, oh, it's an alleged Israeli strike, like as if, you know, it could have been Zimbabwe or, you know, it was the Martians. Yeah, no, it's Israel. And then, of course, they give the pretext. They say, well, look, man, there's these big Iranian boogeymen, you know, they're hiding somewhere in Syria. And they try to, like, justify it for them. Now, I want to ask you a question. If Russia had just fired missiles on Kiev's international airport and completely destroyed it, so it's completely out of service, what do you think would be happening right now? Because if you compare that sort of outrage with what's happening now, I mean, there's nothing, right? There's no outrage whatsoever. This is kind of like a page 10 story, right? Oh, yeah. The Israelis, they just hit Damascus airport. Yeah, anyway, back to the news. Wow. Again, this is the main airport. This is Syria's biggest airport. It's the international airport. They've completely destroyed it. The Israelis say, oh, but there were arms shipments. I'm sorry, man. If the Russians said that about the Kiev airport, do you think anyone would care? No one would care. They'd say, why did you hit that airport? You can't do that. This is civilian infrastructure. Don't lie to yourself. You know that they would be outraged. This would be page one. Page one. They'd say, oh, the barbaric Russians, look how they strike the civilian international airport. You know, Ukraine's biggest airport. They would be outraged. They would be live right now on MSNBC, on CNN, all over it. And when Israel does this to Syria using American weapons, with American support enabling them, yeah, it's whatever. Who cares? Oh, yeah, Hezbollah something Iran, something Hezbollah. You know, the same recycled propaganda. They would say, if this happened hypothetically with Ukraine, they would say, of course Ukraine is allowed to bring in weapons. Ukraine is trying to defend itself, right? Ukraine is allowed to have weapons shipments from Poland, from the UK, from whoever. Ukraine is allowed to have foreign fighters, but not Syria. No weapons shipments for Syria. You know, in this case, Iran is a country. Russia is a country. Hezbollah is, you know, the most effective armed force in Lebanon. And they're invited legally in Syria. And they still don't tolerate it, right? They still say, oh, this is bad. This is shady. What do you mean? What do you mean exactly? It's okay for Ukraine to do that. It's not okay for Syria. And the Israelis think that, oh, we're defending ourselves. This strike right here where they destroyed the airport. You see that? You see how they completely blew up the runways? Do you know where they launched these missiles from? These were surface-to-surface missiles. Do you know where they launched them from? They launched them from inside Syria. The Israelis launched them from inside Syria. Do you know where? The Golan Heights. All of this whole area occupied by Israel since 1967. Illegally occupied by Israel. Actually, Israel not only occupies it, they annexed it. They even annexed it illegally. And they have the stones, you know, adding insult to injury. They not only destroy the airport, but they also launch the missiles from inside occupied Syria, from the Golan Heights. Can you believe that? Almost every single week, I'm not kidding, almost every single week they go in and they bomb Syria and they do it from the Golan Heights. And you know why? Because the Israelis are trying to cripple Syria. You know the expression in English, kicking someone while they're down? This is that, okay? This is kicking someone while they're down. So Syria is dealing with Turkey occupying Idlib in the north. You got 30,000 jihadists in the north. You've got the Americans and the Kurds taking all the oil in the northeast, Hasakeh Deir Zor. You've got another US base in El Tanaf. You've got the Israelis occupying Golan Heights. You know, Syria's like chopped up in four or five parts. And Syria's still not liberated all the other territories. So Syria's still in a state of war since 2011. And at war with Israel, technically speaking, at war with Israel since 1967. So Syria's got 4 or 5 fronts, literally 4 or 5 fronts to deal with. And the Israelis are like, you know what? Let's go and bomb them. Let's kick them while they're down. Who is bombing who every week? Is Syria bombing Israel every week? No, Israel is bombing Syria every week. Who just destroyed Syria's airport in Damascus. Israel destroyed Syria's main airport. Both runways are out of action. Who is the one that is taking the oil from the Golan Heights? Who's the one that's building ski resorts on our land? Who's building ski resorts on Syrian soil? It's the Israelis. Who annexed the Golan Heights? It's the Israelis. Syria's not doing anything to Israel. They're liars. They have the upper hand, and they are kicking Syria while it's down. And not only that, they're even supporting Al-Qaeda. Don't take my word for it. Do not take my word for it. I will show you the former head of the Mossad.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the Al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded Al-Qaeda aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political or strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Shameless, absolutely shameless. Right? They think Syria is their backyard. Well, I have news for you, man. Because a lot of armies and a lot of countries and a lot of civilizations and a lot of empires came to Syria, and right now they are nothing but dust and ruins. Right? The Romans, the Greeks, the British, Ottomans, all of them. Right? So don't get so cocky. And the question is, where are the Russians? Where are the Russians? Because the Russians have the state-of-the-art defenses. The Russians also have ties with Israel. Remember, the Soviet Union was the first country on earth to recognize Israel. And you would think that maybe the Russians can talk to them, can tell them, stop doing this, because, you know, we're trying to solve multiple issues here. They could maybe mediate. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I've heard a Syrian official tell me that the reason the Russians don't want Syria to respond in full force to these attacks by air or the surface-to-surface missiles is because they know that it will open up a second front, right? So let me give you an anecdote. Let me give you an anecdotal example. So this is from a few weeks ago, a few months ago. I remember the Israelis sent a bunch of jets into Syria to bomb Syria, as usual. Syria fired back with surface-to-air missiles. And then the Israelis came and bombed Syria again. Like, you know, punishment. How dare you defend yourself? So that's one tiny example. Imagine what would happen on a larger scale. I don't know what their strategy is. I don't know. I don't know why it's, it's being allowed that Israel can come in almost every week, every second week, and just, humiliate Syria like this. What is this? It makes me very sad. This makes me very sad because when I think of the airport in Damascus, I think of coming out and seeing my grandfather, my uncle, my cousins, my family picking us up. Really nice memories. Really nice memories. All the time. And now they desecrate it like this. Photograph I took of the airport. It's nothing special, but I took this on what was the day? I think 31st of July, 2010. Let me just double check. Yeah, 31st of July, 2010. Just, arriving at night. Great memories. Such great memories, Matar Dimashq al-Duwali. So the international airport of Damascus. That's it. And right now what they're doing is they're rerouting all the passengers that have had their flights canceled. They're rerouting them through Aleppo. Yeah, here, this is from Euronews. So they're saying that Sham Wings Airline, which is a private Syrian carrier, is rerouting all its flights to Aleppo International Airport. Syrian Airlines, the best. It's really the best. When you take a flight here, you go to London, they'll like put you in this cramped seat and throw a cold tissue at you. They're like, here, eat this. And when you go with the Syrian Airlines, you can sit comfortably, right? They bring you a nice hot meal. They treat you like a human being. I think the Arab airlines, they have this mentality more because there's a mentality of being hospitable. More and more countries reestablish ties with Syria. Let me give you an example. Saudi Arabia, which funded jihadists inside Syria, is not something big and official, but we heard whispers that they're warming up to Damascus. Jordan, the king, he had his first phone call with Bashar al-Assad, with the Syrian president, I think in 10 years, just a few months ago. And they reopened flights to Damascus. You see this? This is from Middle East Monitor. Jordan to resume flights to Damascus, September 28th, 2021. It's not even a year ago. Another one is the UAE. We saw Bashar al-Assad meeting with the foreign minister of the UAE. I don't know if they've reopened flights from Damascus to there. But, Iran, for example, they also reopened flights because of COVID. You remember a lot of things had to shut down. And they had flights reopening just recently for religious visitors and so on. Damascus, it was starting to be rebuilt. A lot of countries sending more tourists, sending more travelers, more business. And, it's all gone now. It's out of service. We don't know how long it's going to be out of action. This might take weeks. It might take months to fix. And the problem is it might happen again because no one is doing anything about it. Here's the response from Russia to this Israeli strike. So Russia condemns the Israeli airstrike on Damascus airport. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, stated that Russia strongly condemns the Israeli airstrike on Damascus International Airport and calls on the Israeli side to stop this vicious practice. That's good, huh? Practice, that means it's regular. So a statement on the ministry's website said that we are compelled to reiterate that the ongoing Israeli shelling of the territory of the Syrian Arab Republic in violation of the basic norms of international law is absolutely unacceptable. We strongly condemn Israel's provocative attack on the most important object of the Syrian civilian infrastructure. Such irresponsible actions create serious risks for international air traffic and put the lives of innocent people in real danger. The Iranian foreign minister condemned the Israeli missile attack on Syria and vowed his country's continued support for the Arab state. This was during a phone call with al-Muqdad, with the Syrian foreign minister. He said that Israel's attacks on Syria's infrastructure are not only in violation of the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also contravene international laws and humanitarian principles. So exactly, they talk about international law in terms of Ukraine and Russia. All of a sudden, all these NATO countries that spent decades bombing and killing other people and countries, they have something to say about Ukraine. But then when Israel, their friend, their colonial project in the Middle East, is bombing Syria and bombing civilian infrastructure, they have nothing to say. It doesn't even, not even a statement, not even a pretentious readout. Zero. They are absolute hypocrites. And notice how Russia and Iran are talking about international law. International law. If you listen to officials, to presidents, to prime ministers, to foreign ministers, when they speak in Europe or the United States, they're saying international norms, right? Or the international order. They never say law because they don't care about the law. Russia, as I said, has ties with Israel. Many Israelis are originally Russian Jews. Many are Ukrainian Jews. Not all of them, but a good chunk, right? A good part. So both Russia and Ukraine have ties to Israel, and Russia at the same time is also supporting Syria, giving heavy support to keep the government there. It's about protecting Syria from Al-Qaeda, from NATO, and so on. It's much bigger than that. It's not about one guy, whatever they want to tell you on CNN. But my point is that the Russians now are kind of veering more towards the Syrian side, which is beneficial to Syria. It's good that there's beef between the Israelis and the Russians. There's no doubt about it. And I want to say another thing. A few weeks ago, there were reports of an S-300 being used. I told you just before, the S-300 is a state-of-the-art anti-aircraft surface-to-air missile battery built by the Russians. And Syria has a few of them. I think some that were delivered were destroyed by the Israelis. I think there was an S-400 that was destroyed as well. But that's besides the point. The fact that this was used in response to an Israeli airstrike, it's kind of like giving the Israelis a warning. Watch it. Yes, of course, Russia and Iran have the technology to take down the Israeli jets. The problem is you would open up a new front. And I don't know if that's what Syria needs right now. At the same time, it's frustrating to see this stuff happen. who wants to see their country being bombed? Who wants to see the airport being, taken out of action, completely out of action? This is very frustrating. They're basically coming in and humiliating Syria. It's unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable.